Finally, this week, NXT has seen a lot of shakes and turnovers. We see Javion Evans, right? Trick Williams. The list goes on to all the people that have made their way up to the main roster.
Javon Evans got hurt on Raw.
That is correct. Javon Evans did get hurt in his match this past week on Raw. I was watching that.
It happened during the commercial break, too.
It happened to be a legitimate injury, the way that they were describing it, everything like that.
Yeah, I hope he gets well soon.
So we did see that. Javion Evans, but he's on the main roster. Trick Williams on the main roster.
I got to correct you. It's Javon Evans.
Javon Evans. I see that apostrophe in there, that J-E,
Yeah, it's Javon.
Apostrophe V-O-N.
Yeah,
so Javon Evans, Javion Evans, Javon Evans, Trick Williams, Lash Legend, the list of people who've made their way up to the main roster from NXT, which makes us wonder who is next. And listen, we know about some of the main stars of who's next, right? About like Tony D'Angelo, Ethan Page is a current champion down there. Obviously, Sean Spears has been down there for a while. I think, Andre Chase? He's been there for a while. So we know some of the people who might take over in the short term, Ricky Saints, right? But who are some of these people that are going to, are entering NXT that we got to know? That are coming in that you think has the best chance of not becoming champion, who's not next in line, who's not next to take Obafemi's spot, who's next to take that bottom spot to introduce themselves.
Elio LaFleur, he's the French luchador. Like, he looked good against Ethan Page this past week. I caught some of the clips. That dude's got a bright future. I'm excited to see what he has to offer. So that's probably one of my favorite ones right now. Shiloh Hill. I know we were talking off air, before we got on and started recording. Shiloh Hill is somebody that I really liked when he was doing the LFG, the Legends and Future Greats that they had on A&E, I believe it was. I did watch that, and I became a fan of Shiloh Hill's through that. He's a former football player. He's got that big grin with the gap with the missing tooth and everything. Like, it's a cool look. I know Undertaker's a big fan of his. So if Undertaker likes him, why can't the rest of us? So I think those are two names in particular. Obviously Ricky Saints is going to be, to me, I think he is the face of NXT now. But the question was, who else is there that we're not really talking about? Those are the two.
Yes, names. We know when there's number one, and number two is going to take number one spot.
Yeah.
But then who's going to take number two's spot?
Who's behind?
Who's number three to move to number two?
I think Elio LaFleur is like a name that I'm really high on right now.
I saw the debut this week of Eli Knight, and the only thing I just have to say about that, he was entertaining. The fans seemed to love him. I don't necessarily know if, like I said, it was his debut because he's been on Evolve and other things like that. He's actually been in some independent circuit, including GCW. So I've probably actually seen him before. But I do think that with a name like Eli Knight, if he was to, have that long-term thought of making the main roster, with LA Knight on the main roster and him having nothing to do with him, I would have to say there's probably got to be some different rebranding there. We can't have an LA Knight and Eli Knight when they have nothing to do with each other. It's a little too close. So I'd imagine there would have to be some rebranding before he makes it. It reminds me a lot of like when you watch minor league baseball back in the day and you'd watch like the Yankees AA team and there'd be a player on the team back in like 1999 who had the number 2 jersey. And you're like, you're not going to have that number 2 jersey when you make it up to the main roster, right?
Yeah, that's not happening.
That's already taken, right? So it's kind of the same idea. Like you can be Eli Knight here on NXT, but when you're on SmackDown with LA Knight, that he's already there. And we've already seen enough rebrands of LA Knight that I think it would be Eli Knight who had to get to rebrand. But I imagine some time before that. Just curious. I think some TNA stars, like Leon Slater. I could see him because essentially what we've kind of learned a little bit in this TNA NXT partnership, to the detriment of TNA, but also to their benefit, but to the detriment, is that TNA is essentially a new feeder program for NXT. I know TNA has the Hardy Boys and has their main people and is actually treated as a main component. But when it comes to maybe some of their other stars, like the lower levels, like the X Division, WWE, I think, looks at them. They're not looking at their the Hardy Boys of coming over to NXT.
They're not looking at Frankie Kazarian. They're not.
Yeah, but they are looking at people like Leon Slater and looking at ways that they can introduce. And it was obviously Leon Slater this past week, you know what I mean, who showed up on the main roster. And that's only because apparently he's stuck in the UK while he's working through some visa issues. And that's why we haven't seen him on NXT and TNA programming so much. But he is definitely somebody who I think, even though obviously he's an X Division champion, I could see him working his way up. Obviously, we saw against, you know, people recently like Obafemi and such, you know, making a name for himself. So I could definitely see him making a name for himself on NXT and making himself kind of like Joe Hendry, more of a full-time NXT star than he is a, you know, TNA star, and kind of making that transition over.